And we're live. Welcome, everybody, to our first LinkedIn Roundtable. And today's LinkedIn Roundtable is all about strategy. So, Sophie, Jason, and I are all in one capacity or another LinkedIn specialists. We help our clients with their LinkedIn in various ways. And although we all have different approaches and how we help our clients, we are all very much of the same mind of how we do it in terms of ickiness and selling factor. So I would so our we will have several of these roundtables, which will explore and discuss strategies for service-based business owners and thought leaders that do use LinkedIn to grow their audience and attract clients. So this is for you guys. So please come with your questions. We'll be here for a good 40-45 minutes. And as we discuss what we have prepared for you, we invite you to pepper us with as many questions as possible. I would love for Jason and Sophie to introduce themselves so you all know who you have on this panel. So, Sophie, why don't you go first, please?
Okay, welcome everybody. I'm excited to have these two wonderful people with me to chat about LinkedIn and how to leverage LinkedIn to grow your business. I help mission driven entrepreneurs take the joy they have in the work they do with their clients and bring that over into their marketing. That's what I do principally with LinkedIn and really bringing that mission to the forefront.
Excellent. Jason?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Jason Van Orden. I live in Brooklyn, New York, and I'm a business strategist that works with coaches. Specifically, I like helping them to reach and enroll and serve more of the people that they are uniquely positioned to serve in the world. And LinkedIn is definitely one of the effective channels that I help them to do that through.
Excellent. And for those of you who don't know me, I am an award winning producer and filmmaker. I like to call myself a recovering producer. Today, I help service based businesses, forward thinkers, and visual artists to stand out on LinkedIn with most all kinds of contents, but emphasis on video and lives. So they can attract their ideal clients and see the changes that they want to see in their world. So let's jump in and just talk very big picture for a minute. How do we all use LinkedIn to further our personal businesses? Like, how does LinkedIn work for us? Do you want to go for it, Jason?
Yeah, sure. So for me, LinkedIn is one key part of my overall customer journey, and I break down the customer journey into three phases. You've got to gain their attention, you earn their trust, and keep their attention, and then eventually you inspire them to buy when they're ready to go. And LinkedIn plays a role in all three of those phases for me. I mean, through the networking and the content and my newsletter. I'm always bringing new people into my following. I'm always looking for opportunities to engage with them, to earn that trust, have calls to action, to identify who I should be having conversations with. And then that inspire to buy bit is when I find somebody who looks like they are in need of my services. It's trying to get that conversation going through DMs and eventually to a phone call to talk about it. But in that way, like LinkedIn helps to move all three of those phases forward for me. And it's, through consistent content creation, consistent engagement, and consistently chiming up conversations with the right people, those who seem like they're ready to talk.
Yeah, and I love how you like using it in all three aspects of your user experience, and that you're using the word consistency, because we're going to come back to the word consistency for sure, because I think that is one of the key elements here is that being consistent with it, and having a strategy that a lot, because without consistency you cannot be consistent and have a strategy, because then everything is all over the place, right? So Sophie, how does LinkedIn work for you in your business?
Yeah, so for me, LinkedIn is really a tool to share the whatever knowledge, experience, and perspective I have. And, I was talking about bringing the joy of your client work over to your marketing. And basically, for me, LinkedIn is a way to really share and talk to my audience as if they were already my clients. And I think that's how people really warm up to you and then want to actually get the work that they can do with you privately. So I share everything that I know about LinkedIn and marketing openly. I use the customer journey as well, but more in the sense of talking to people who are unaware of whatever the problem is that they have, and really helping them to understand the benefits of remedying whatever the situation is for them, then problem aware, and then solution aware, which is more about, testimonies, case studies, and things like that. So it's very similar to what you were talking about, Jason, but with a twist. And I really use LinkedIn to create connections and again get people on calls, off of LinkedIn.
Yeah, very important. So we have our first double question. Actually, I'm going to see how this works by showing it. So Michael, who's actually in one of my LinkedIn engagement groups, has two questions. What are businesses' biggest mistakes on LinkedIn, and how can we avoid them? Which I think is a brilliant question. And then the second one is, how can businesses break into the streams of ideal prospects, especially when your network isn't your ideal client? All right, let's address the first part of this. What are businesses' biggest mistakes on LinkedIn, and how can we avoid them? What would you think is the answer to that from your point of view?
I think one of the biggest mistakes is to just see LinkedIn as something on your to-do list that you have to just check off. You create your post, you stick it there, and then you go and you post and ghost, I call it, right? The LinkedIn platform is really meant for engagement, and that's the beauty of it. And that's when the magic all happens, is when you are there to engage. And so one of the biggest mistakes is this post and ghost, for sure.
Yep. Yeah, I would totally agree. Jason?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest mistakes that I see is people not being really thoughtful about the messaging that they're putting on LinkedIn. And that may be because of a lack of clarity about who the ideal client is, or kind of go back to what Sophie was saying, there's different levels of awareness that people have, and you need to know how to speak to each of those levels of awareness. And, so sometimes I'm posting content that's very much geared to gain the attention of new people who've maybe never heard of me. I'm trying to give them show that I'm speaking about something relevant to a top of mind question or problem that I know they have, trying to offer a new perspective and, cut through that noise long enough to get them to lean in and want to go, this looks interesting, I need to know more about it. And then on other times, I know that I might be creating a post that's more meant for people who maybe have been following me for a little while, and I'm trying to lay out more why my approach to reaching the outcomes that I know that they want to reach is the one that I think is the most effective for them, and help them see like when they might be ready to pursue that, to make steps towards the outcome that they want. So that's one of the biggest mistakes I see, is just not being thoughtful about your content and where it's speaking to people throughout that user experience or customer journey.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. New York City was happening outside. So yeah, I think my answer to that would be somewhere between the two as well, between both of yours, where I think that, again, the consistency. So, post and ghost is just, why bother? Then just don't post at all. And then not having a posting or content strategy. The bane of my existence is always when people that I work with are sort of sloppy with their call to actions, and either ask 5 questions and confuse the hell out of their audience, or ask no question. And I'm like, well, then you might as well just, hit the snooze and stay in bed a little longer, because why bother if you don't have a call to action, and one that works for your audience. To your point, Jason, right? There might be the people who kind of just come to your profile and don't quite know yet who you are. So why should they care? Why should they listen to you? And then there's also the lurkers, and we all have them. If we think that only 10% of all people that are on LinkedIn are actually posting, there is a huge amount of sort of driftwood around that can really, be brought into the fray with the right kind of messaging and the right kind of engagement questions. I could go on, but we have many more questions. So to the second question that Michael asked is, how can businesses break into the streams of ideal prospects, especially when their network isn't their ideal client? I think it's a brilliant question, actually, because I think quite a few of us are probably grappling with attracting the real audience. My answer to that would be, since I have the microphone, for me, it's all about video, because if I am showing up on video the way I want to show up for my clients, and I can show them how it is. It's sort of like a little taste teaser of how it would be to work with me, because especially today, where 99% of our work is on Zoom or on some kind of a video platform. It's basically like a self-selection process. Like, I could see myself working with this person. I like them, or hate their voice, hate what they're saying, goodbye, and then we don't waste anybody's time. So I think video is certainly, or live shows, which is something I love harping on these days. It's my favorite thing to do. It are definitely a great way to sort of get that pivot happening. What do you guys think?
I think that it's a big problem that a lot of people on LinkedIn face, where they've built up their network of people from various parts of their life as a following on LinkedIn. And so they're following that first audience that's going to usually see their content may not actually be the people that they're trying to reach with that content. And so, one of the many pieces of a good LinkedIn strategy is to be building that targeted audience, the people that you do ideally want to work with. And of course, one way to do that is creating content that speaks directly to one of my favorite quotes in marketing and sales is always enter the conversation already going on in the mind of the prospect. That's from Robert Collier. And so are you posting quality content that is going to cut through the noise and be highly relevant and resonant with those that you want to reach, both in speaking the language that they use to describe the outcomes that they want, the obstacles that they see as holding them back from those outcomes. And so if your content is providing value that directly enters that conversation and they come across it, that's where they're going to hopefully be enticed to at least follow or connect with you. So that's one way that you grow that following. And then the other is you can continually be sending out connection requests to people. If you're going to networking communities frequently, make sure you're connecting with those people in those networking communities. And I'm assuming you're going to ones where you're bumping into people that could be your clients, or seeking out new people to connect with and have an authentic connection with on LinkedIn. So being deliberate though about building up that following is important. And I've even gone back through and kind of cleaned out stuff from my past life as an engineer. Not that I don't care to keep in touch with people, but I'm trying to really curate that following that I'm creating on LinkedIn. So I'm always reaching the right people.
Yeah. What about Sophie? What about
you?
So
I agree with particularly the first part, what you were saying, the messaging needs to be really on target for your audience. The other thing is, in order to get them to even see your content, what I like to do is finding your ideal clients, through the search and through posts and et cetera, and commenting on their content, or, touching base with them through their content, and entering the conversation that way. I'm not such a hot proponent of, not so hot on sending connection requests to people who don't know me yet.
Yeah.
I prefer to sort of warm up the relationship with some sort of exchange through comments. Yeah. And I find that in that way, people who are not normally in your sphere will start to look at what you're doing and see your content. So I think they're complementary strategies.
Yeah, and I mean, to add to that, we actually stopped doing any kinds of sales navigator, because we just felt that the whole, like, hey, how are you? You have this amazing profile. Let's connect. It just felt icky and inauthentic. So our stuff is all inbound at this point, because then people are seeking us out. That means that they have an interest, be it that they want to sell to us, which of course can happen, or that they actually are looking into getting some help with their LinkedIn, strategy, growth, whatever. I find the commenting on others is a brilliant strategy. I've never done it because I just don't have patience for it, but I'm sure that is a very good strategy too, right? We have more questions, and we have our own questions. So I'm going to, in the interest of time, just move on a little bit. So the next question is by someone who we cannot identify because LinkedIn is being whatever LinkedIn. So, what are your suggestions to separate personal post info from your business page? Interesting question. Um, any of
Yeah.
you want to take that one?
I'll take the. I think it depends on what kind of entrepreneur you are and who your audience is. So my audience is primarily solopreneurs, very small business owners, and so I think that what I recommend always is to just have a personal page. You could have a company page just so you can get the logo onto your personal page, but I
Mhm.
don't recommend posting stuff on both pages. It just gets to be way too much work when you consider the engagement time you should put in. So for my audience, I recommend not posting on the company page. So that's the simple answer there. But Jason, I think you may have bigger clients. I don't know.
I mean, mine's for me. LinkedIn is the primary purpose is just business stuff. So I mean, while I might post stuff about myself, and weave it into my content at times because I do think it's important to for people to get a sense of who you are. The profile, the content, everything is still focused on speaking to that ideal client and creating value for them on LinkedIn. Similarly, I did start a company page, but just to have the logo on my my personal page. I don't have a strategy for posting to my business page. I know some do have that. The one thing that I am going to be experimenting with on my business page is apparently if you run a LinkedIn event through a business page, there is a feature to actually get the opt-in and email right there on LinkedIn as opposed to go off. So that's the only thing that I've seen where it's in the back of my mind to use my business page for that potentially. But yeah, that's how I approach it and think about it.
Yeah. So I mean, I again for the same reason you two, and I tell my clients to do the same thing, like create the business page so you have the logo for your resume, and it's not that dreaded, blue and gray background. Um, and I always say, like, people buy from people, right? So especially, I mean, unless you're like Nike or Apple, there's no real use for your business page. However, I do have I mean, calling it a strategy would be kind of a little exaggerated, but I do post everything I post to my personal page also goes on my business page because I have the luxury of a VA. So it's basically just a cut and paste schedule again kind of affair. And you get to invite every month 10 people, 100 people, I think, or 110 people. It's an odd number into your LinkedIn business page, and I do that. So that's just sort of the the evening click the people activity while you watch TV. So I do that just to kind of make sure that my business page is not just sitting there with five followers, right? But beyond that, yeah, no real strategy around that. I make sure it's clean and I update it when I update my profile, and that's pretty much it. Um, and to your point, Jason, which I think is a really important one too, in terms of content, personal versus business, which is a whole other big conversation in itself. Yes, LinkedIn tends to be a lot more business centric and focused, but I think sprinkling in, I always say choose 5 topics to talk about in your personal life, and especially if you're not sure yet what it is, and stick to it, and just sprinkle those in so people also sort of get a more three-dimensional idea of who you are and what makes you tick. So and I've always done pretty well with that, and so have my clients, and I do get a lot more engagement when I post something personal, but I never post from the messy middle. I always post from the this has happened and this is the solution, right? That's, or it's just a cutesy thing, or whatever. So make sure that it's not the awkward, all my beans spilled and it's still a big mess.
Yeah. Share from the scar, not from the wound, I heard.
Oh, that's a very nice saying. Yeah. Exactly. So then Lauren Fleshler has a question. If here, let me show it. If you find yourself commenting on other folks' posts but do not see that they are reciprocating,
right?
English, very difficult language. How should you pivot your strategy? So great question, Lauren. Who wants to go for that?
I don't know that you would pivot your strategy. I think you might change a little bit how you approach it. So basically, if you want to comment on other people's posts, that's the beginning of a relationship, right? But you need to grow and nurture that relationship. So, if let's say you identify a potential client, right? You comment on their posts, they're not going to come and comment on yours, right? It's just not going to automatically be reciprocated. Um, but you want to comment and continue to have that conversation over in their content. And after a while, start asking questions in the comments and etc. And then get to a point where maybe you have a call, or maybe you share something in a comment or in a DM, where you're highlighting something that you posted, right? To give them a reason to kind of jump the bridge into your content, and then they'll start to see it.
Mhm.
And hopefully reciprocate. If they don't reciprocate at that point,
Yeah.
it's just gonna happen.
Do you have anything to add, Jason, or move
Well,
on?
when I comment on other people's posts, my goal is not necessarily to have them come and comment on mine. It's just to show up on their radar, or to also just add value to LinkedIn.
Right.
Add a thoughtful comment to a conversation that I think is important. And of course, my followers see that I'm talking about that, and then that brings somebody else's stuff to their awareness as well. But it's if I'm doing deliberate, like, hey, I want to comment on these people's posts for specific reasons, usually it's because I'm trying to develop a relationship with them, either for a partnership potentially, or I might be, maybe I see that there might be a potential client. We've had some interaction, so I'm just trying to stay on their radar and keep an eye on what they're up to, and find that moment when it might be appropriate to have a conversation with them. So, I'm kind of looking at other indicators, I guess, to see if my commenting is paying off. And it's usually not are they coming back and commenting on my own content.
And I think a little hack there also, Lauren, is to make sure that you mention the person in whose comments section you are, so they actually see that you've commented. So I always instruct all of my people in my groups to definitely make sure that they always mention every comment that they leave. A, the algorithm likes it, and B, then they get an email. If most people get an email, some people turn that feature off. That alerts them to the fact that somebody has commented on their post or on their comment, whatever it is. So mentioning people is quite effective. The next question is from Glenn. How much more interaction do posts get, video versus text versus images? I happen to know the numbers on the video part. So a video text over a video post over a regular text post gets over, I think, 12 times more engagement. And when we talk about engagement, there's also a whole conversation to be had about what are vanity metrics, what is engagement, what is a like worth versus a view versus an actual comment. So we're talking about liking and commenting, because those are really the metrics that you can do something with, because you can see who the person is. Views, for me, I don't even look at views, because it's just a so-called vanity metric, because there's nothing I can do with that number other than brag about it. However, and I want to throw this in because it's my favorite topic, lives get another 12 times more engagement over video, not even over a text. So the live is like absolutely top of the crop when it comes to engagement. One of the many reasons why we're here today. And a image will get good engagement. I don't know the number on that by heart, if it is your image. So the algorithm knows whether this is a stock image or something, AI generated. So they really do give you more credit and more eyeballs, so to speak, if your images are your own images that you either created or uploaded or took. So make sure that you have genuine and your own content visually. It will pay off very handsomely in terms of being shown to more people on more people's feed. Great question. Thanks, Glenn.
One small caveat, it's very important for everybody to remember that their own audience is going to be perhaps different than the average. So there's a good chance that video and lives will do really well for you, but you have to test it and make sure that it is actually working with your audience. I
Absolutely.
Yeah, I use carousels a lot. I really enjoy them. My audience likes them. I get a lot more views when I do a carousel than a text with image. But I've had many clients have great success, but I've had a couple of clients for who it just did not work. Their audience just was not into it. So always test.
Yeah, and I think there's also sort of, that your personality, how you show up, right? So sometimes you are much better with text, and then there's nothing wrong with that. If that's you, if you're a brilliant writer and that's how you capture your people, then stick with what you know works for you and your audience, right? Not everybody's good on video. I hate to admit that, but there's people who just really should not be on video,
Mhm.
just not because they're not good, it's just because they don't feel comfortable, and that comes across, right? So it definitely, I think you're making an excellent point there, Sophie. Like, you need to do what works for you and is authentic to you and your audience. Jason, any remarks to that?
I don't know that I have much to add to that other than just I mean, we kind of touched on this, that like be cognizant of what metrics really matter the most, because sometimes more comments and likes doesn't necessarily mean growth for your business. You know, you might find that you post videos and it gets lower engagement because it's more of a commitment for people to watch it. But then you might realize it leads to me getting better clients because they get to see me and hear me and connect with me in a different way. Again, this is what you want to test. Um, so yeah, just make sure that you're kind of following through and really paying attention to the metrics that matter the most for you, for whatever your goals are for business growth.
Yeah, would totally agree. Somebody to follow on all these metric things. And this guy is a complete numbers guy, nothing else but numbers. Is Richard Vanderbloom. I'll put him in the show notes, or in the comments after the show. He puts out an algorithm report every year and a half, and that is like, if there's one piece of, I'm more an intuitive poster, but his report I will actually go through with a fine tooth comb and look at his numbers and look at what he suggests. And he's LinkedIn sanctified, so his stuff is like really very thoroughly researched and very well done. So somebody just posted a link.
Yeah.
I don't know whether that
It,
is.
it's what you were talking about.
It is okay. Great, great. Whoever you are, LinkedIn user, million thanks. Very much appreciate it. So I want to get to a couple more questions, but then I also want to make sure we kind of get to our conversation that we have planned for today, so we don't go completely off the rails. To just a really quick answer, are we using hashtags these days? Not really. So we have never been really big on hashtags on LinkedIn. And according to Richard's last report, thanks to AI, hashtags are dying a slow death. So I still use my own hashtag, and I use a couple of others, but it's not important anymore, basically. I don't know whether either of you have a thought on that, but that's sort of
Yeah,
the,
I still use them because I don't know
yeah, out of
what
habit,
the
right?
point
Yeah.
is. So, but I pay much less attention than I used to. And I used to recommend to my clients, do the research on hashtags that are really followed by a lot of people and then use those. But the problem is you can't even do that anymore. Or you can, but it takes so many steps, it's ridiculous. So yeah, I'm not really caring much anymore.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so, yeah, so the KPIs, or the key performance indicators or metrics, be clear on what you follow and what makes sense for you specifically. I think that is sort of the consensus here, and in the comments as well. So in terms of questions, I'm going to leave those for a second, because I think now we have more people agreeing with us, which I always love. And thank you, Catherine, for your comment. Catherine is, by the way, an actress turned accountant. So yes, she loves her metrics for sure. um, and so let's see, where are we? So I think a conversation that I would love to have with both of you, because we approach it completely differently, but we're totally in sync over the how, is how do we turn LinkedIn connections into our clients, not from a strategic point of view as much as from a non-ickiness factor. So you don't want to be the I don't want to use the a-hole word, but I just did. You don't want to be that person that sends you, this DM listing all the things you do and you've never heard from that person before, right? I often actually answer, I don't know you. I'm not gonna, like, how is that strategy working for you? So just sort of in a very holistic way, what are your thoughts on conversations on LinkedIn such that they are coming from a place of authenticity or from really wanting to be there for our clients rather than, I need to make another 10K this month to meet my goals.
Yeah, one of the things I would say is I never send cold DMs. I think I've said that already, right? So I think it's really about creating your content in a very thoughtful way. And one of my pet peeves, you were talking before about the bane of your existence, is the long wall of text posts, right? So you want to create posts that are very short, very to the point, with an exciting, title, subject line that you create, and just make it really short and enough that it will jump out at a person who's scrolling through their feed, right? And you catch their attention at any point in the customer journey that they're at, right? So either they're unaware and you wrote something that's going to make them think, oh, wow, maybe I have this problem. Or whether it's problem aware and you're giving solutions, potential, ways that they can tackle their problem, or whether it's solution aware and you're doing case studies. And either way, it's like seeds, you're just throwing these seeds to the wind, and people will respond to whatever works for them. So always be in service of what the people in your audience might need, and they will then come to you. And then it's up to you to nurture that relationship through the comments, through the DMs, and then getting on a call. And then, eventually, the magnet, email, all this other good stuff. But it's really this very slow journey. And you were saying before, Nina, there's a lot of lurkers. And many times I've had this happen where a client will come to you, they haven't commented, they haven't liked, you don't know who they are, you don't know you've never heard of them. All of a sudden they're all in your face. They're like, oh, I want to get on a call. I've been watching you for years. I love your stuff. And so remember that when you feel like there's crickets.
The crickets are there, they're just not making any noise, right?
Right.
They're in their 17-year whatever rotation. Yeah, totally agree. Yeah. Jason?
Yeah, so one of the reasons why sales and marketing goes awry is because you're trying to talk to people who aren't the right fit or who aren't ready yet for what it is that you're offering. And one of the goals of a good marketing and sales process is to identify who does have a top of mind outcome, goal, problem, challenge that you can help them with, and is sending indicators that they are looking for that kind of thing, and therefore would be ready to have a conversation about it. And so, one of the ways that I think of it as like kind of putting radar out to see like who shows up as being ready to talk is by using deliberate calls to action to see who responds to them. And that might be like, hey, I'm doing this, event workshop about this specific topic, and I've chosen a topic I know is a top of mind issue for the people who make for my best clients. So clearly, if somebody's expressing interest in that, and especially if they show up and attend, and then especially if they inquire afterwards about having a call with me, like these are all indicators that stack up. And and so you can watch the small ones all the way up to the bigger ones. If somebody's subscribed to my newsletter and commenting on it regularly, that definitely is one indicator that I'm watching and looking at. So a call to action could also be asking a very specific question that if the right person were to respond to it, it would give you some indication that that's something that they could use some help with. And so in all of my marketing and sales, I'm looking for opportunities to be, I want my marketing and sales to feel like an active service to those who are in my orbit. And so, I'm providing opportunities for them to get greater clarity about the issues that they're facing, the things they're trying to accomplish, and the best way to reach those things, and then watching how they interact with my content and my invitations to find the ones that's like, okay, that's who it's worth having conversations with.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree. And I mean, for me also, I find that steering that conversation to me is very much also done with our call to actions, where we're very, like, we have a whole strategy just around that. Like, what are we doing? Are we just calling people to share? Like, I love asking people just really simple questions about something that I just shared or taught them or talked about, so the it's as low friction as possible to start a conversation with me. And that works really well for us, actually, because then people just feel very much invited without there being the book a call or download the lead magnet or any of these sort of higher friction things where it's like, ooh, I give them my email, now I'm going to be on their email list, blah blah blah. Maybe I'm not ready for that yet. Maybe I don't want another email popping into my inbox, even if it's just once or twice a week. So these sort of really easy ways to engage, to sort of, for both sides, to put the big toe in the water and see if the temperature fits, right?
Yeah.
So talking of all of that, and posting on LinkedIn, obviously we need to create these posts. And I think for a lot of people, me excluded, creating content is sort of like the factor. Like, what am I going to write? I have nothing to say. Imposter syndrome is coming up big and strong and healthy. So how do we create? And I'm asking more about how we handle it, because I know some of us also help. I mean, I know I help my clients handle this, but just from our perspective, how do we handle the content creation so it doesn't become a full-time job or a bigger job than it should be? Because in the end, we really are not in service of creating content, we're in service to our clients, right? So how do we balance that? Are there any strategies around that you care to share?
Well, one of my favorite ones is to repurpose your content across multiple channels and just be very deliberate about your workflow. So just to give you an example, often I'll start by posting something like a new idea to LinkedIn as a post, and sometimes a newsletter to see how people respond to it. And if that's going well and I get some good comments and questions on that, then I'll take that and brush it up a little bit, and that will go out to my email list as a newsletter as well. And then if I get a great comment on a piece of content, and then I try to reply to comments, and then I'll find that that brings up additional ideas. And in fact, I'll even grab comments from last week's post and then like flesh that out and turn it into the next week's post. So I'm always just thinking about how can I maximize the usage of my creative output in terms of the ideas that are coming to me for content, the time I'm spending creating and editing that content. So, find a workflow that works well for you. And I know that one thing that's big for you, Nina, is consistency. And I think it's important to choose formats that you'll be consistent at because they fit your strengths and your preferences.
Very true.
But just because we might be here saying like, yeah, try video, you might get more clients from it. It's like, well, if that just absolutely is not, at least right now, but you're great at writing and you just, you love to write and flow your ideas out, like great, like do that. If you feel a little bit more artistic and creative, like maybe carousels are great because you can, there's a visual element to it. So, take that into consideration as well. But I'm always thinking about how can I repurpose and maximize the content that I'm creating.
Yeah. I mean, just to quickly tack on to that, and I could talk about this alone for 3 hours straight. It's just, in addition to that, I'm also a big fan of serializing content. So especially when it comes to video, you want to survive the video game, you need to batch produce, right? And that is, some people are like, oh, I need the inspiration, blah, blah, blah. But, you can batch produce and still do short notice stuff because you always have the visual content plus your post, right? So the post then can be the more last minute in tune with the conversation that's going on right now. So definitely, I plan 3 months in advance, roughly, And then, from there, a month and a week in advance or 2 weeks in advance, I try to be always 2 weeks ahead. But I also allow for that spur of the moment inspiration thing because that's really important as well. But yeah, so batch producing for me is how I survive the content creation. And if shit hits the fan, and it always does at some point or another, I know I have a content library that I can fall back onto. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Having a pipeline is a
Mhm.
pipeline of a ready post, or at least ready post ideas that you can then just brush up at the last minute and write. But yeah, I think one of the big dangers is that we start talking about a topic, we start talking about something, and we get into a rut of always having the same type of content, whether it's the content itself, the message, and the format. And I think it's very important to have diversity because people are
Mhm.
different in their way of consuming data,
Yeah.
and there are different places in the customer journey as well. So I have a whole system where I make sure that I have all the questions that people need to answer to make sure that they are addressing the different stages of the customer journey, and also all the different types of formats and different styles of messages, so that they have that. And then you can pick and choose from that. Once you have your big message map, you can pick and choose, and then you can just go ahead and create posts easily. You don't have this like blank page syndrome of like, oh my
Yeah.
god, what am I posting today? Right.
Yeah, yeah, and that's why I love video too, because it just gives me a starting point for my conversation, right? So, like even like this here, right? You think this is the only thing we're going to do with this? We're going to create like at least five, if not seven or eight, little micro videos from this, and that will be posted, in terms of either the questions we answered or the topics that came up. And so it's like the gift that keeps giving, as I like calling the lives. So we have another really interesting question, which was a little while back. So I hope the person's still here. Unfortunately, just identified as LinkedIn user, so I don't know who it is. I would love to hear all of your takes on vulnerable process video versus polished sizzle reels. Love that question for obvious reasons. So, but I think it goes for any kind of content, right? Even a carousel or a infographic versus doodle, whatever. So, sort of a more vulnerable process versus the more polished. Um, who wants to go first on this one?
I think that's a plant for you, Nina. You should take it.
I mean, I'll start with it. Let's put it that way, and then I'm sure you all will have stuff to add. So, those of you who know me, I actually have a series called "Conversations About Shit That Matters," where I go into all of that much deeper, because as I had mentioned before, when you're sharing and you're talking about the messy middle, and not about talking. What did you say, Sophie? And then it's
From the
share.
scar, not the wound.
Yes, share from the scar, not the wound. So there's a very fine line between talking about personal icky stuff and personal stuff that actually makes sense. So in the end, know your audience, know what they want to hear. I always love to give the example of this guy who had a very, very vulnerable post about his ADHD. And when I started reading it, I was like, oh, icky. I don't want to know all of this. But as I continued reading and I got to the end of it, I'm like, it was so freaking brilliant. The guy is a creative who works with other creatives. A lot of creatives have ADHD. He spoke to his audience. And when you looked at the comments afterwards, they were brilliant because he had hit the nail on the head. Now, maybe, I didn't know him that well. So in the beginning, I was like a little put off by it. But it made sense. And he never spoke in that post from, oh, poor me, I have ADHD. No, he spoke of, this is what I have, this is how I handle it, and this is how it actually can work to my advantage. So he came from the scar, not from the wound. And if you can do that, your audience will love you for it. But I always say, like, if you're not, that master storyteller or that master communicator yet, and you want to test the waters, pick a couple of things that you feel comfortable about. And it can be mundane things like, I love to talk about the fact that I have a dog. I share my time between Switzerland and New York. And those are safe things to talk about, but it invites the audience into a more open conversation with me about, and being able to connect with me. That's all it is. So yeah. I hope that helps. And I don't know whether Jason and Sophie, you have anything to add to that.
I think
I
that's great.
will only say very briefly because my audience knows this. I don't really do video. I'm still not comfortable on video, so certainly never do lives unless I'm invited or like you hosted. The only times that I have done videos, I needed to be very spur of the moment. And so when I'm in a training, so I'll speak to people who are still uncomfortable on camera. When I'm in a training and I'm in that mode, I'm in that mode of sharing and I'm comfortable because I'm already in that field. Um, During the breaks or immediately after, I'll just grab my phone and say, "Hey, somebody asked me about this, and this is what I answered." And that's the only time that I've been able to do videos, short snippets that I can put up. Or otherwise, I'll take a whole training or a podcast or a video like this, and
Mhm.
I'll extract a little bit. So you can do video without it being live.
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, I love canned video, and quite honestly, I've never gone live by myself. That
Yeah.
would not be something I would feel particularly
Mm.
comfortable doing. So for me, this format is wonderful, right? Interviewing people, having conversations, that works. Just hearing myself talk without being able to edit it and control it,
Right.
not so much. Yeah.
Okay.
Uh, Jason, any thoughts? And I think this is not just video. This is in general. I think very relevant, right? How much do we share? Where does the TMI start?
Yeah. Well, when I think about good messaging, good offers, good content that really stands out and connects with the people that you want to reach, a framework that I teach is the 3 R's, which is relevance, resonance, and remarkability.
Mhm.
Relevance is, are you speaking to that top of mind issue, pain, thing that they're actively aware of, looking for help with, and so you're showing up in the moment with the information that they need. Resonance is showing that shared meaning. As human beings, we have all kinds of shortcuts we use to decide, can I trust a person? And sometimes it's small things like, oh, we both are dog owners, that actually,
Mm.
that is a connection, a point of connection with people who are dog owners. We're both parents, we're both, so things like that. So sharing those elements of your life infuse that resonance into your content, so people are like, oh, you seem like me, or like the kind of person I like to associate with, hang out with. And particularly, for a lot of my clients, and I think a lot of people that both of you work with, who are like, they are in a lot of ways their product, their brand. People will want to do business with them if they feel like they can trust them, not just because they're credible and really good at what they do. Trust is both about credibility as well as that likability, and we lean a lot on credibility and sometimes forget that resonance or likability or warmth piece that needs to be in there as well. Remarkability we can talk about another time, but that's how I think about those meshing together.
Yeah, and I love that you're talking about your 3 R's, because that's sort of, we're unfortunately at time, and that brings us sort of into wrapping it up with, like, sort of, if there was one piece of advice that you would give to people about their LinkedIn strategy in parting, what would that be?
Just one?
One piece of advice, which can be,
Yeah.
can be a puzzle of several. Well, yeah. So, sort of to the question like that Michael asked earlier, what is the biggest mistake you see businesses make? So, like, where do you wish people would, like? What is the one thing what is the one thing that makes the 80% happen, for people on LinkedIn?
I'd say consistently experiment, but then pay attention to what's working and what's not. I see people who post consistently, but it's clearly very drive-by posting. Maybe they're getting some likes, but I don't see that it's doing anything for their business, right? So trying those different formats to see what works well for you and for the audience you're trying to reach, knowing what metrics you're watching to see if it feels like it's working or not. We didn't get to a question earlier about, like, how long do you wait to know if it's working or not? I mean, that can really vary, but why not do a 2-month, a 3-month experiment? I'm going to post a video every week and see what happens, right? So that's what I would say. Consistently experiment, and then know how to watch for what's working so that you can iterate on that, and dial in what works well for you and your audience.
Yeah, I think that's very, very astute. What about you, Sophie?
Yeah, so my audience is mission-driven entrepreneurs, and you were talking, Jason, about resonance. To me, that's so important. So The magnet model, which is what I use, is you have the three R's, mine are three M's. So mission, message, and movement. So really focus on your mission. Put your mission forward instead of yourself. That will always serve you well. Message is about knowing your audience inside and out, knowing them so well that you know them better than themselves, and you can speak to what's really underlying and subconscious even sometimes. And then movement is really taking on the bigness of your mission and really speaking and being, out there and powerfully sharing your message. And if you stand behind those three things in your LinkedIn work, it will bring you your clients, your ideal clients.
And I'm going to finish off with three C's.
Love it. R's, C's, and M's.
All right, all right. Well, then Clockwise Productions had to go with C, right? So mine is consistency. No surprise there, right? Consistency, consistency, consistency. Could be all three of them. And then very much like you're talking. What was your middle one, Sophie?
Message.
Message. So mine, same message, but I use the word clarity because be clear how you speak to people and about what and to whom and all that. Be clear on have a clear. I always said strategy doesn't have to be super overcomplicated, but have one, right? And then the CTAs. I just it's a small part of everything else. The call to actions, but that is to me the 80%. If you do that well and consistently and you're clear on what you want there, that's going to drive most of your positive engagement that you're looking for. So that is would be my advice. The time flew. I wish we would have a little longer time, but I also think we always want to leave our audience wanting a little more. So my mom always said, leave the party when it's hasn't climaxed yet. And when you're a teenager, you go like, F that. Like, who does that? But anyway, stuck with me to this day. So we're going to leave. I also want to announce that we have another one of these roundtables planned for August 21st, also at noon. I think it's, don't even know what day of the week it is. Anyway, look it up. You will get, we'll post that on our feeds. We will also invite Shannon Hernandez into that conversation, and we'll talk about community building specifically on LinkedIn. So that's going to be a super interesting conversation as well. And thank you so much for spending some time with us today and choosing to be here and ask awesome questions. And we will all see you soon, I hope.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.